Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're discussing Thinline. It's the film from Mercy Aigbe's production that went to cinema sometime in December 2024. And now it's available to stream on Netflix and I think on Kava as well. And so it has reached a broader audience and we can finally talk about this film with spoilers. Now I have a lot to talk about this film. It's a peculiar film for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to spotlight a few. First, it's that for a crowded December release, as we typically know in Nigeria, where a lot of people or a lot of the big filmmakers tend to release films, Ǹkè Akíndélé, Tony Abraham, and now Mercy Aigbe. It's a crowded space where the cream de la cream of Nollywood tend to dominate. I want to get all the money a lot of you have earmarked for the celebration. And so this production from Mercy Aigbe was an interesting one in the sense that it has a lot of religious undertone to it. I was thinking this could easily pass for a Mount Zion film, but with a larger budget. It was that religious-y, that Christianity. The plot follows this guy, Pastor Raymond, played by Uzor Arukwe, who is a man of God. He has a congregation that is powering and has a loving wife, played by Mercy Aigbe herself, and their family is a picture-perfect one. They have no kids, but their ministry is doing well. And then running concurrently with them is this call girl, Annie, played by Uche Montana. Yes, Uche Montana was nominated for an AMVC for this role, which was quite interesting, but we'll get back to that. But Uche Montana plays Annie, call girl, who is, let's say she's a kleptomaniac. Another character literally calls her that. There is I see money, another person is valuable, another person's thing, yes. When the film starts, she's robbing this guy, played by Tele the Icon. And then she robs this other Randy house husband of his wife's money in his possession. And then she sets her eyes on Pastor Raymond and covets him, wants him. And it was pretty much interesting how the setup was done, which I liked. I thought that the setup for the film was a good one. It felt very much like a Christian story. It felt like we're setting up this pastor who had a picture-perfect life before. And as you would expect, I was thinking we're going to get the whole 9 yards of his fall from grace, his attempt to cover his sin, which, is the natural human response, and then his eventual redemption. That would have been the nice holy trifecta of, whatever it is that was happening in his life. And we did get that in some form. But the film undergoes a very jarring change in genre, somewhere around the middle. I think around the half mark. Yes, 1 hour into the film. It's about 2 hours on time. We shift gear when, I'm going to give another spoiler warning here in case you missed the first one. Annie dies. Yes, Annie is brutally murdered. Somewhere around the middle. At this point in the story, she had her way with the pastor. Not just once, but at least twice that we see on screen. The first time is where she drugged him and then basically raped him. Yes. And feigned that it was consensual. And he just gave into his natural human impulse to want to hush her, give her hush money and other things. And then by the second time, where he'd gone over there to silence her, she threatened to release pictures, compromising pictures, just speaking of them, while in the act. And he went there to silence her, but she gave him an ultimatum to either, to settle her with the sum of 10 million, which he impulsively bargained down to 5 million, and then have sex with her. And this time around, he did it willingly. Yes, of course, under duress, but willingly, his 2 eyes on. And I'd like to add here that for somebody who is more or less got against his will in a sense, he showed up and showed out during the scene. If you watch the movie, you understand what I mean. But long story short, like I've said already, Annie died somewhere in the middle. And then we move from this Christianity film that we've been watching all this while to a murder mystery. Yes. And movies that change genres it's nothing new. It's something we've seen happen time and time again, but there's a way with how Thinline does its own that did not work in its favor. Now, up until that middle point where Annie died, my guess is that if you've seen this film, that it held your attention. Like I said, the setup was pretty good. How we're introduced to Pastor Raymond, how we're introduced to Annie, how we're introduced to how both of them, their paths crossed, was good. For the most part, you could see it happening. And though, while the 1 or 2 persons might have issues with how easy it was, per se, for Pastor Raymond to fall into Annie's clutches and deceptions. One or two persons might have issues with that, but for the most part, it had your attention. This film held your attention. Yeah, you could see it playing out, in some form, and then you also feel pity for Pastor Raymond. You can't help but, because I think that the setup was really good. But around that midway, it changes genre. It's almost like the film changed directors as well. Yes, it felt like that. It felt like we're watching another film entirely. And that was because the writing took a really deep nosedive from there. Logic also took a back seat. And yeah, let's just say that the film was more or less fighting for its life without even being aware that that was what was happening. But for me that were watching, I myself that was watching, I in particular, I just, at first I was hoping, like I typically would do when I'm watching films, that hold my attention at first. I was hoping, please take the landing. But the middle mark is not the ending, and so it veered off way before the end, and I just wasn't a fan anymore. Now, story wise, where we got to know who the killer was, it turns out to be Pastor Raymond's wife. Yeah, it's always the spouse, I guess. Shout out to Pastor Raymond's wife, who killed Annie in a fit of anger and jealousy. I don't know. I think it's anger. Yeah, she gave into anger. And so this whole calm pastor wife with her demeanor and everything tells that there's a beast within. I mean, there's a beast within all of us, I guess. So that's not the problem. It's just how the setup towards revealing how the killer was, it was pretty much obvious. There's this thing where you leave crumbs and bits and pieces so that we can. But when time the killer is unveiled, you're like, oh yeah, who done it? I knew you. It was made sense. But this one, it was sloppily done. The writing revealed her way early. There was this shot earlier in the second half of the film. Yes, after we had switched into murder mystery, when Pastor Raymond was arrested and all the other people that Annie had offended at one point in her life, all the people that I mentioned before, Akay Mason's character, and so there was this shot of Pastor Raymond's wife, and I just could tell, come on, this woman, now you drum, because the camera work was just so telling. Yes, at this point, and it was, yeah, let's just say that it was obvious. It was obvious. The writing of the film wasn't clever enough to mask killer that much, but that's not the problem. The problem with the second half as a whole was the writing, and how it was just not clever enough to execute the idea. Love the idea I had. It's a good thing to dream big. It's a good thing to want to execute big, but the execution at the end matters, and I thought that Thinline was hampered by its execution in the second half. But it's still a decent watch, for what it's worth. It's a decent one. The performances were good. Uzor Arukwe, good actor anytime, any day. Mercy Aigbe, good actor with what she had to work with. Uche Montana was good as well, yes. But AMBCA good, I guess, because the NVCAs have not always been this epitome of great quality, if I'm to be honest, so I guess, but it's not, yeah, performance was okay. It was okay for what it's worth. Fine film. I thought the simplicity that first half had, the second half could have done with it. So even in its attempt to handle the spirit of a murder mystery, it could have done with some of that simplicity in its writing and all. And I thought it would have helped it till the end. The characters that were spearheading the second half were not interesting. The detectives were not interested. Performance-wise, dialogue they had to work with wise. So yeah, I just thought the second half didn't get to. But let me know, have you seen Thinline? Do you agree with what I've said? Or do you not? Or do you think it's one of the best films you've ever seen in your life? Like, I could easily every now and then when a new film is revealed on Twitter. Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.